1977 was a very interesting year for my family. Because in 1977, my father was just 22 years old. A man that had already 2 children, but very intelligent in his whole life in front of him. And while trying to find himself, he falls in love with a 27-year-old beautiful lady who is my mother. They were married in the city of Compton on Pearl Street in a backyard, in a small private ceremony. My godfather, who was my father's pastor. Now, how did this come about? My father didn't know his real father, who was in Florida, and he didn't find out who he was until his 30s. And my father grew up partially being raised by a older gentleman who was a stepdad, and he ended up passing. A man that I used to call grandfather. He died when I was about 6. He was from Omaha, Nebraska. But as my father got older, and I'm talking about in the 20s, he had an issue with his sister. My dad's older sister, which would have been my auntie, was actually killed in the year after. And my father was noticing that his sister was going through these personal problems, and he wanted to go to a church and find a pastor that could help counsel him. And he found my godfather, who was his pastor. And my mom and dad were dating at the time. And when my father started getting into church, my mom, who grew up in church, kind of strayed away from it. They started going back to church together, and they joined Apostolic Overcoming Holiness, AOH. If you guys know, it's one of the main Pentecostal black churches out of Mobile, Alabama. And my father started to learn from my godfather some of the elements of manhood. Working hard, closing your mouth, letting your words speak more than your actions, not buying things on credit, not making excuses for yourself. All of these are great traits that my father taught to me. I use them till this day. But one of the things that my godfather taught my dad was that he should do everything to keep the peace in his marriage. He shouldn't anger his wife. He should do things to appease her. And anything to keep peace. And my father, who thought my godfather was wise in all things, took to this advice. Now, my father, I talked to you about this. He ended up getting stressed out and not able to handle the pressures of being married to somebody 5 years older than him. And because of this, not being mentally strong enough, he found himself on drugs. Mainly because he was always trying to keep the peace. And this was an outlet for him to deal with some of the things he didn't challenge on the marriage. And when I think about my father's downfall in the 80s and the early 90s, it was that he was trying to keep the peace and not standing up for himself. I tell this long drawn out story because I want to talk about how simp dads affect black men in the black community. And as much as I love my godfather and I think that he was doing the best that he could, and in many ways he was so strong. In this way, he was weak. And a lot of times we think in the black community, what is thought is that single moms are the biggest problem. They produce these young boys, they produce these men, and these men cannot fend for themselves. These men cannot do anything for themselves. And they're being taught to be emotional, like their mothers. And with so many of these guys in the black community, we have too many simp Negroes. And black women are always blamed for this, and which is, I agree, there's definitely a lot of blame to go around there. But we don't talk about the mentorship from black men coming to black men that tell black men to shut up, to allow things to go on and on. And while my father got this particular message from the mentor, the godfather, a lot of black men that grow up in the homes with their fathers are being taught the same thing. You should submit to your wife. Respect women at all costs. If you're disrespected, it's okay. Love the queen at all costs. Do whatever it takes for you to be successful. Keep the marriage together. Don't challenge disrespect with disrespect, but learn how to deal with her anyway. And you have the biggest, weakest part of African American men that have been taught this, not by their mom, so to speak, but by simp dads. Men who are weak and men who are soft. What my godfather didn't realize was that even in my situation as a young man, I was seeing this. Even though my father was trying to do these things, my mom didn't respect him. My dad complained that she didn't want to have sex with him, didn't want to sleep with him, and there was a levels of arguing. And that was because my dad had became the woman in the relationship. And my dad tried to, and my parents eventually divorced. But my dad didn't learn. He took the same playbook to the next relationship and faced even more a brutal slaughter. And now, as a man in the 60s, he's still paying from that lesson that he learned many years ago. You know, I want to tell black men something. Always stand on your own, too. Whether you're right or you're wrong. Stand on it. Stand on your truth. If anything you can do, be a man. Be the best man that you can be. Always do that. If you can't do anything else, always do it. And don't teach your sons to push their own pride away for the sake of making a relationship work. Because what's going to happen is you're going to create a depressed young man. You're going to create a depressed man, period. And you're going to create a situation where a woman doesn't respect him. He can do everything right, and she won't respect him. All that she will do is cheat on him. She'll go out, she'll find somebody else, and that young man will be done. It's just the way of, it is what it is, okay? And we really got to talk about that. That young man will be done. He'll be hurt. He'll be confused. If anything, he's gonna become one of the guys that might have a hatred towards sisters. And really it's because you gave him the wrong playbook. That's what happens in the pro-black communities, a lot of the Pan-African communities. A lot of these guys are out here worshiping women, and then when they find out that the queen that they thought they had doesn't respect them, now they want to be mad. Oh, I was in the Nation of Islam, and my wife left me, or I was in the Pan-African community, and my wife. Well, no, it's just because you taught this boy to be a guy that doesn't get any respect. So he doesn't get the respect. And this is where we're at, gentlemen. We got to teach our young boys to lead with respect. Respect themselves. If somebody disrespects you, you meet the disrespect head on. You don't wait. You hit it there, head on. And that's the reality. And that's how women respect you. So I don't think that single moms are the worst problem in the black community. They're one of the worst. Could be the worst. But right on par with them are simp dads, our simp stepdads, our simp mentors. And that's what's hurting our young black men too. So guys, let me know what you think about this. Subscribe, hit the bell. All my contact information is the first comment. Pick up your Black Men Are Perfect t-shirt. And as you know, the buffoonery remains at an all-time high. I'm out.